Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of Low Code Campfire. This is episode number 148 for May 24, 2024. It says Open Lines Friday, but there's quite a few things on the agenda that we can get into, so it will definitely be a full hour. Let's see. Introducing myself, I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain App, and also from Plantain App today we have Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager. Let's see if I can rename myself so I show up as me. All right. This is an event we do every Friday, this hour, 10 a.m. Central Time, to go over anything that concerns our low-code community, usually from a technical perspective, but we'll go where you want to go. It's a all skill levels welcome event. We get into both high level and low level discussions of the product, Plantain App, so do participate, and we appreciate it when you have either a question or an idea, suggestion, something that helps move the conversation along. It is completely unscripted, but live webinar. It's recorded, put out on YouTube, youtube.com/plantainapp, and so we encourage you, of course, to subscribe there so that you know as soon as we have new content available. What did I say? This is 148, so 147 hours of this stuff out there. This is the agenda that we pick from. We always say hello, and we always do first call, and the rest of them happen as the conversation warrants. But do engage, jump in, show and tell from your system. You can use the chat window, but do engage. After an hour or so, we go to Afterglow. We turn off the recording, enjoy each other on a personal level, raise a virtual adult beverage. Here it's only 11 o'clock, but I can do that. And so do stick around for that if you have the time. Very few rules, but if you've got noise going on behind you, it's great to use mute. You can submit questions and topics in advance with this QR code. You can also find that link in the stuff that we send to you. So, hello all.
Hello, good morning.
Happy Friday.
Yes, indeed.
Good morning.
So we'll advance right into it. Anybody bring a first call, something to talk about?
This is Mark.
Yes, sir.
So I have a question. It's a strategy question. It's not a burning issue that needs to be fixed right now, but I'd appreciate yours and anyone else's input on how to accomplish this. I am creating a on-screen presentation with slides and text and images. I have done this already. I want to think about expanding it. So I've got an action grid that has all my slides complete with the titles and the pictures. And then I've got a form that steps through one record at a time of the action grid and displays these things. So what I wind up with is a nice full screen presentation, like a slideshow in PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
I want so this data is accumulated in an action grid. It is not accumulated in a table and queued up as records in a table at the moment. I want to expand the content that I put into the slideshow. Like I want to bring in optional things at the time of starting the presentation. Like I want to bring in a title slide, and the content for these items, all of them can come from the database. They don't have to be typed in by a user. So if I say check the box on a title slide, then it's going to know where to go to get it, and then it'll put it in the action grid listing in the appropriate place, like at the beginning, and so on. Now I want to be able to put multiple things in there, like an additional thing at the end, an additional thing maybe with quips or quotes somewhere in the middle. So the overriding thought here is I need to be able to add things in the order that I want them to be added in at the time the thing is assembled. with a button that assembles it all. So I am thinking that I would like to have something along the lines of a workflow that has options built into it that I can trigger with the inputs that puts all this together on the fly. Doesn't save it, it just uses it for the action grid. Okay, so that was a lot. My question related to that is, can I do this in a workflow and still not be saving all of this data in a table somewhere? Because I kind of want it to live as long as it takes to run the presentation and then not be stored, because I don't need it to be hanging around.
What's your data source in the listing?
Currently, it's a long SQL statement that assembles what I need. And that does work, but that's static. It
Right.
knows what it needs. And I want to be able to add some dynamic user choices into that. Oh,
So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well,
Thanks, Mike.
for me, it comes down to, can I base the action grid on a workflow? And I think I can with an API. I wondered if there was another way to go about so attaching a action grid to a workflow, or what do you think?
Yeah, so I was going to go with, I mean, you're already ahead of me. I was going to suggest API. So if your
Mm.
workflow creates a JSON data, you can just pass that back through from the API. And so you can set your grid/listing up to have a API data source. So now it comes down to, I mean, all that is relatively easy. So then it's the question of having a workflow compile what you need it to compile and getting a nice JSON data source. Right?
Okay, cool. So you would do this as a JSON list in the workflow, or as a list and then convert it to JSON as an output?
Yes, I believe so. Yep. Because the list would let you, I mean, you can insert, you can do a lot of work to insert content into a list, and I think that's stuff that we've been discussing over these last few weeks, the ability to manipulate lists. And then it's relatively easy to take a list and convert it back to JSON, which then your API can retrieve and pass back to the grid.
Okay. Would you, that sounds like a recommendation. Is there an alternative that I should be aware of, or is that the way to go?
So, I mean, it's just, I mean, so now we're down to, for me, it's down to preferences. I approach the world from a data standpoint, right? So I would be, for example, probably trying to assemble this stuff in a temporary data table. It helps me to visualize and to see, okay, I ran this and I got that, and now all the results are visible to me, so that if the logic isn't working right, I can see the data and manipulate it. So again, just for me, I would be approaching it from a temporary data table kind of standpoint, but that's a preference. Right? If you want it to be truly transient, what you're talking about is you'll assemble a result and it'll all basically be in memory. That JSON exists just for the duration of the event, and then nothing to clean up. But if anything goes wrong, you'll have less tracks, right? You'll have to make your own tracks to say, well, what was it? What did it look like at that time?
Yeah, I hear you. I have another version that actually does use a table. It's not my preference at the moment, but I have been working that way so that I can do what you said. I can see the progress. I could see what it's making and what order things are being placed and so on. My issue really is I don't need that data hanging around after the presentation's been delivered. And so I just thought it would be clean if I never had to delete all of those records.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if I do keep it in a table, then I just have to figure out a reliable way that it gets cleaned up.
Right. Sounds like it's very transient. I mean, so if you go the way that you're talking about, it only exists for the duration of the presentation. You know, basically one time call and the presentation is going on and then it's done.
Mhm.
So having an automation that cleans up your data every you know, and any records that exist that are more than an hour old could be deleted. It would just be an ongoing simple job. But I get it. I'm not arguing for, yes, you should definitely use data. I'm just saying that it wouldn't be hard to clean up after something like that.
With an automation, that's a good idea. Yeah, I can put a time limit on it. Or a timer.
Yep.
Sure.
Sounds like, and you know, now I'm answering questions you didn't ask. It sounds to me like if I were designing something like this, okay, it sounds like there's going to be some standard slides. Are there some custom slides as well, or is it all just picking and choosing from standards?
The format of each slide has a template. That's standardized. The content that goes in it can all be pulled from the database.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't need to be typed in. Even the date that would be at the title slide would be the current date that it's being run. So everything can be constructed without user typing it in.
Yep. Sounds like an interesting project.
Hmm.
Ben threw in variable table. Exactly what do you mean, Ben?
I have to find that mute button. You were mentioning how you like to see your data in a table and be able to look at it. Now, this would really only be helpful for viewing wise if you're using something like SQL Studio Management Studio, SQL Server Management Studio, excuse me, SSMS, to view it, because you'll be able to put like a debug statement and do a select statement on it. But if you declare a variable of a data type table, open a paren, and then detail out all the fields and close that paren, you create a table within a variable. And then you can do select at whatever your table name was, because it's a declare statement. It is temporary data. It is a complete table, behaves, acts just like a table. You could do inserts, you could do deletes, you could do updates to it, everything. But it's within scope. As soon as your script ends, that table is gone. It's not stored anywhere. It's all in memory. So you'll still be able to do everything you can as if it was a true table, loop through it, do whatever you want with it. But as soon as your script is done, you don't have to worry about deleting anything. Poof, the data just vanishes.
So this would be, for example, directly within the SQL data source of a grid. You could have a however complex script that you want that assembles your content directly in the grid.
Correct. So if you flipped your grid data source to the advanced SQL, you can write whatever script you would like in there. I do it quite often, and build your data source as you see fit. And then once you're done, all you would really need to do, if your data source that you built, that table, that variable table, is in the structure you want it, you just basically at the very end do select star from at and whatever your table name that you made was, and all your data just gets submitted to the grid and then disappears.
Yep.
Okay, good idea. Thank you. So I can visualize the data right there in SSMS for troubleshooting, for designing. Good idea, Ben.
So we're gonna. I pulled a. We've been talking about our low code playbook, and I pulled a play that talks about. And we're going to get into it if we have time. But the play was business logic in workflows, and so the idea here is if the thing that you're doing is transient and simple enough to put in. I mean, you can put quite a complex query into a SQL data source, but it's one standalone thing, right? Whatever it is, it exists there, and it's very self-contained. If you went the workflow route, then you can have subordinate workflows. You can share business. If there's any purpose in sharing business logic from one thing to another, you can assemble a result based on more than one workflow. Yeah, I don't really have it more defined than that, but it really
Yeah,
just
Dale, that's the route
depends
I'm
on
headed.
use.
I like the idea of the workflow, so that it can be influenced by user decisions when the presentation is being created. It can run sub workflows or not, depending on what's being chosen. So I like the flexibility that offers.
We've also been covering dynamic workflows, which opens up. Again, this is probably not the use case you're trying to solve, but you could run a different workflow per customer or user. So you could have different subordinate workflows that you pull in dynamically and add to your result. It's just, again, is the thing that you're doing simple enough that it can be assembled in a SQL data source and you want to maintain it there? That's great. If you want to do it through a workflow, if it might have either share other components or have other uses besides just being displayed in a listing, then workflow gets you there.
Okay, cool. And API, that's the only way to hook a workflow up to a grid. Is that right?
I think so. It's really what can a grid hook to, and if you look at your data sources, a server request data source lets you pull from an API. There isn't a data source that retrieves data from a workflow. You could probably define. I've never done it, but you could probably define a token that retrieves the result of a workflow, and if that result is JSON, then you could just put you probably do it through I don't know, some way there's probably some way to directly implement a token into a grid, and then that could do it. But I just think the most straightforward way would be through API. Patrick, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I was wondering about that option also, but yeah, no, I think that through a server request is probably the best option.
Okay, cool. I am aware of being able to hook an API up to a grid because, Dale, I've watched your videos. And I still have one open on my screen now. But it just keeps occurring to me that it would make sense that there would be the ability to hook a grid up to either a token or a workflow. It seems like, oh, I ought to be able to hook this up to a token or to a workflow. Where's my option for that? But it's okay that I can go through an API. It's totally okay. I just keep coming back and thinking that.
I suspect Bogdan would like that idea. Be able to consume a workflow as a data source. Meaning, sounds like a feature request, or something to mention to the product team. Patrick, maybe you can take note of that one. Thank you.
Yeah,
right.
and actually I thought about that myself earlier too. It would be cool.
Yeah, just because creating an API, which then has to be secured, and you're just consuming it from within. It's just an extra step. It's a pipe that, I mean, we advise that we would, you know, I'm saying this would be a good pattern to use because that's the way the product is today. But if you could just assume a workflow as a JSON data source, that would be very cool. And eliminate that extra step.
Yeah.
Nice. Any
Okay.
other first?
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Any other first call for today? All right, I'm going to go on and mention some stuff. So let's see. We've been talking about version 126, well, ever since we released version 125 a year ago, but the official release date is now soon. We had some additional testing that needed to happen, so it did not happen on the 21st. Pretty sure it's going to happen next week, but I've said that before, so you guys can chastise me if you want. I think it'll be next week.
Well, I said it last week, so.
Yeah, some additional testing needed to happen, and one of our key test guys was out. It's just sad when they get a personal life that interferes with this. Hey, Don found the raise hand button. What's going on?
I did. Yes, I did. Regarding 126, recently I had a problem where I was trying to upload a fairly large file and I was getting a strange error saying this field is required. It was a real file. It was there's nothing wrong with the file, nothing corrupt, etc. But I just kept getting this error. And I had a older version of 125. I had I didn't have the hot fixes in. So you suggested to put the hot fixes in, which I did. So does that sound like it's a thing I should try to document as good as possible and turn it in, or is that something that you believe is as the upload has been addressed in 126?
I'm going to answer it slightly different than that. Everything that we do in 125 gets rolled into 126. So if it fixed your issue, then I would assume 126 will.
Except it did not. I still get that error when I finished the hot fixes. I still see it. It's a weird thing because it uploads the file when if I were to stop there and jump over to the assets and look in the folder where the upload is supposed to put it put it there. It just says this field is required. It gives that error. If I continue on with the form field, even if I got the error, I click add and it still works. It's a very strange error. Because you'd think if you got an error, then the submit button would be blanked out, but it's not.
I would say yes. That I mean, it's a bug in the software. It's not going to be fixed in 126 if I mean, unless we've encountered it, and I don't recall anything about it. I mean, I'm not aware of any open issues. Patrick, if you have anything, please.
No, not either.
So, I mean, 126 isn't. We it sounds like a bug that just needs to be addressed. In testing that, and maybe you already know, have you tested that with other browsers?
Yeah, good question. I was pretty much in a hurry trying to get since it's a production issue and our client keeps running into that each time she tries to upload those kinds of files. I did it for her and I did it with one browser. So yeah, I'll do a more thorough test of it to see what I can duplicate and what kind of things I can find, and then I'll just re-put it all in a ticket and leave it all to you. All
There's
right.
some things with file upload particularly seems to be there can be in browser specific issues, and so that'd be one of the things that I would check if it's transient. Sounds like this happens sometimes, not sometimes. So what's the pattern? Is it just
Right.
certain files sometimes, and you can't determine a pattern, but sometimes it's stuff like they're using a browser and you use something else and then it works. And so maybe we need to investigate. In any case, just like every other problem, if we can duplicate it, we can at least have a chance of solving it. Until we can duplicate it, it's very hard.
Fantastic. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
So last week, in my absence, Patrick was talking about the Trumbo Wig editor and apparently has more to say on the topic.
Yeah, so we were struggling to figure out how to implement it, and as it turns out, we were all kind of we were making a bigger deal out of it, and it was partly because we were being misled by documentation that was for the current version that didn't really match the version of that we have implemented for Trumbowyg right now. So Dale, if you want to stop sharing for a second, I can share this. So I'll show you first the change that I made, and then I'll show you the implementation of it. I'll show you the implementation first, and then show you how it works. So just as a reminder, what we ended up doing is under events, we loaded static files and we pulled in the JS file for the version of Trumbowyg that we're using, and we pulled in the CSS file for the version of Trumbowyg that we're using.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
This whole thing is about adding table functionality into.
Yes. Did I not say that? Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep.
It was implied from last week, but yeah.
Yeah.
But he wasn't here.
So then for the Trumbowyg field, we were looking at adding a button drop down. We talked about the button groups and how they don't seem to function for a bit and stuff. And then we were adding the table button here with the background color and border color options specified here as well, or we were putting them here in the button drop down. So we're trying all these different things. Well, as it turns out, those two, all we really need is just after we pull in those the JS and the CSS file, all we need is that table button right there, and that's the only additional implementation that's needed to get the table to work. What was causing the problem is that we were looking at the documentation, and that the table border color and table background color buttons are something that are in the current version of the table plugin for Trumbowyg, but they don't. That doesn't exist in the version that we're using here. So the implementation is actually pretty simple table. It basically allows you to insert an HTML table and add rows and stuff. So, but I just want to make sure that that everybody understands that all that's needed is pulling in that JS and CSS file and then adding a button to your button configuration here. So once that's done, you have the ability here. If you click on the table button, then you get this drop down that allows you to specify your rows and columns. And then once you put your cursor into the table, then it changes to the add row above or below, add column to the left or right, delete row. There's a little bit of problems here with that wrapping over here, but that's add column to the left, and this is add column to the right, but it's wrapping. Anyway, then you can delete a row, delete a column, and delete the entire table. So that's the extent of the options available. If you wanted to do more with this table, you would have to switch to the code view and oops. Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
it loses the table when I switch to code view.
Putting any kind of content into it.
Maybe. There we go. If I put some content into it, it keeps the table. So then you of course could add some styling here. You know, add a header row, a th element. So those are other things you could do here. But the basic functionality at this level of the Trumbo Wig Editor is what you see. So I wanted to close the loop on that. Does anybody have any questions about it? And here's one that I already saved. And this one I did add a little bit. I did add a little bit of, I just put a border and some cell padding in there.
So it'll leave those things alone if you're manipulating the. I mean, the style.
Oh, if I change this, let's see. I got to put my cursor in here, and then say I add a column.
Yep.
Yeah. And then go over here, and yes, it kept my items there.
Good. So remind me, I think we also took an action item to talk to the team about.
Right. So we're also going to bring to the forefront the idea of upgrading Trumbowyg to the most current version, and maybe adding like make it easier to get the some of the basics like table. And I also added there's an indent plugin as well that I pulled in the maybe some of you noticed that when I showed my load static files action, I was also pulling in the plugin for indentation. So that works well too. Oh yeah, there we go. So you can see my
hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Thanks for your follow-up on that, Patrick.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you very much. So I added a feature request along this line with regard to the Trumbowyg, specifically to be able to take the settings and make them either a default kind of a global setting, so you can go in and edit some global area and have all of your new editors that get used to come out in that fashion. Let's say in this case with the table capability added. The other, if we not able to do that, then add the ability kind of universally to implement tokens. So you have a token that's got your configuration in there. In my case, I'm using the Trumbowyg Editor in dozens and dozens of places. So for me to go back and make a change on an editor means I've got to go do, 24, 36 iterations of the same thing. So having it configured like that on a master level would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you again for following this up. This is very helpful. I appreciate it.
Go ahead, Dale.
No, I was just going to say that leads to the question of whether the low static files supports tokens and the Trumbowyg definition supports tokens.
Yeah.
Well, something that I think that I would do if I was implementing it on that scale, one thing that I would do is probably put the files on my server and add and include. But additionally, I think I would create a predefined field that has the button bar configured the way I want it, and that would going forward. That doesn't answer all the implementations you have already set up, but going forward, that would be a way to to consistently be able to implement the field with the way you want it.
So I've not used that predefined field before. How might that work?
So there's a place on the server. I can't remember the exact location right now, but you can
Yeah.
go there and add, create a predefined field. And you can get the predefined field content by doing an export of the form and then narrowing down to the specific field you want. And I think, Dale, I think we at least have that in maybe a Low Code Cafe or a Low Code Campfire, if not a Low Code Feature Focus. I'm not sure. We have something like that, don't we?
I'm sure we've talked about it.
Yeah.
In the 300 hours that's out on YouTube. So
Yeah.
good luck finding it, but yes. But the good summary, you configure the thing exactly the way that you want it to be configured, and then export it and put it in a special magical place, and then it's available as a predefined field.
So I have a question then about predefined fields. Assuming that I go ahead and do that, can I then take and change my existing text field, rich text Trumbo Wig field, and switch it to this predefined type?
So a predefined field is just going to load
Yeah.
the standard Trumbo Wig into place.
Yeah.
That's the
So,
that you get.
for instance, if I pull in the first name field, it's a text box, but it's named first name, and it doesn't really have but that's what it's doing, is it's taking existing field types and just automatically loading settings into those fields.
The predefined field type is going to help you do new things faster, but it doesn't solve the problem of being able to maintain dozens of places. Can you take a look, Patrick, on what token support is there for the event, for example?
So this says supports tokens, so it looks like the URLs could be tokenized here.
So yeah, you could make tokens for, here's the things that I want to load into all my
yeah,
and then just include them if you had updated. It really only partially solves the problem. And the next question is on the Trumbo Wig itself, whether that button definition line supports tokens.
yes, it does. I've tokenized those parameters.
So it would kind of help. I like Patrick's approach better of just setting an include, perhaps, on if you're going to use it throughout the site, rather than trying to maintain it at the form level to maintain it at the page level.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, good suggestion. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Yep, sure.
Ben has his hand up.
Hello. I just wanted to share something regarding this topic on, loading JavaScript files. I actually have something that I can show you really quick on a method that I've used, which doesn't take it completely out, like Patrick was saying, load it locally so you don't have to do it on every page. My only thing with that is then that basically means you're loading it throughout the entire site on every page, whether you need it or not. So I personally like to load it only where necessary, but one of the things that it did to make life a little bit easier. And hopefully, did I share the right screen? You see my mouse?
Form builder.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we do.
Okay, good. So you see here I have a token. I just named my namespace CDN versions. I'm using CodeMirror. Basically, what I've done is in here, I've done some hard coding of the version that I want to use, along with where it can be found, and some additional pieces. This is the root folder, and then this is the add-on folder on Cloudflare. And it just basically returns all that. And I also have another thing that I created here. This actually goes out to the Cloudflare website homepage for the application that you're looking for. That actually gives you that drop down with every single version that they have. And it always defaults to the most recent version. So what this piece does, this is actually a Razor script that I wrote. It pulls out the latest version. And then later on, what I could do is if I wanted to, I can actually compare the current version that I'm using that I've coded. This is the one I'm working on. And I could see if it's the same as the latest version that's up on Cloudflare. And if it's different, then at least I can be aware that they've made an upgrade that I haven't incorporated yet and that I need to test. But all that being said, using this token, I can now come in here and just basically put it in front of each field, every file rather, that I need, depending on which path I need. So like this one has to be in the add-on path. So I just use the add-on path that I've created. Otherwise, I just use the field directly. And this is always going to be that version that I've tested and used. So I don't have to constantly be updating the version number everywhere that I've used this. If I go and I just export this, it's always going to use whatever version I say I want to use in here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And later, if I want to update it, all I literally have to do is change the version number, and that's it. It changes everywhere in the entire application that I use it. So it just makes it a little easier for maintenance.
Great example of understanding what things, of not propagating things throughout where you realizing what things are likely to change in advance and planning for them.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, just to add to that, with the whole version thing that I was talking about, I actually have something in here where it checks the versions. This happens on a daily basis. It literally is building a list of all of the tokens I have in there, ignoring this one, get latest version. So if I add more tokens in there for other specific items, you know, as long as it basically follows not using get latest version, it compiles that list. It processes each one, checks the current version that I have hard coded versus the latest version on Cloudflare, and then sends out an email to the super user of the website just to let them know, hey, by the way, Code Mirror has a new version. So you could immediately be made aware that you have, or rather that an upgrade happened, and you don't have to actually put in a policy or be constantly monitoring or checking on a weekly or monthly basis. Hey, did they release an update? The system actually is going to be checking that for you or for me and let me know if something changed.
Nice. Low Code Cafe this week was about Parallel Gateway. Those of you who hung on to the end actually saw me put it together, but any questions or thoughts about Parallel Gateway?
Well, I'll say that it looks very useful. Good demonstration deal.
Thank you. I think the team has done a really great job in putting that together. That, I mean, the idea of letting many processes, you know, two or more processes happen at the same time and then coming back together again, really, I mean, I think that's a great example of low code, right? You're able to take advantage of a very sophisticated design pattern with minimal effort. Good. Gonna move on. Hey, I thought I mentioned this in the Low Code Cafe, but I'll do it again. Here, there's this coming attraction, version 127. There's an API access switch coming on. So when you're defining an entity, you'll be able to say, do you really want the API activate APIs created for that thing? And if you're not using API access for your entities, turning this off just makes It'll be a little bit faster, and it means that APIs don't automatically get created that you don't need. I thought that was definitely a step in the right direction. It makes me want to push for, personally, I wonder about, we automatically, when you create an entity, automatically create a page that stores create, read, update, delete, which is really, really nice feature of Plantanet. But sometimes you just need a table in the database and the actions that go with it, not, I think we all have a policy, a procedure for moving these automatically created pages off to a place on the site that don't get accessed unless you really just want to use them. And kind of consider them maintenance forms. So having the ability to turn those off, I think, would be a right direction, step in the right direction too. But that's just me. Maybe think differently about it.
No, I think that's good stuff, Dale. I noticed that the information bubble said if you turn this off, it'll remove the APIs. Can you turn it on anytime you want to, like after the entity's been made?
Yeah.
Okay.
The APIs the automatic APIs will follow the switch, and so we always try to the Hippocratic oath of software provision, right? We try to do no harm. So when we release this, for all the tables that you already have out there, it'll be flipped on. It'll remain on because we don't know whether you need the APIs or not, but you'll be able to switch it off and remove them, or but in new tables it's going to default to off, so that you only get them created if you need them.
Good.
Dale, I don't know, does it in order to do that removal, does it require the override, or does it just happen on save whether you override or not?
I haven't tested.
Okay.
This is a very early version of 1.27, so we know this thing is coming, but it's not out yet. And I wouldn't say it's settled. We'd be the kind of thing that we're going to need to test. Anyway, coming attraction. As a result of a question that Ben asked more than a month ago on a support ticket, I spent a lot of time yesterday and more today with the Item Picker Treeview, and the result of this is going to be better documentation and maybe and likely some changes suggested to the development team. But if anyone is currently struggling with Item Picker Treeview, I've finally gotten my head wrapped around it and exactly what needs to happen to make this work. If anybody wants to just see what this is about, I can show you the functionality, and if no one cares, you can just create a support ticket when it comes to you. And I kind of called you out, Ben, that that you were the one that inspired me to do this. Did you get Item Picker Treeview to work for you?
Oh my God, I have so much in my head. I'm actually trying to remember what it was I was even using it for. I've moved on to so many different projects.
Yes.
Because that was like a month ago.
You certainly called us out for not having it documented very well. The current documentation doesn't have much in there. It doesn't point to the old documentation, which has better information, but still incomplete.
Yeah, I do remember when I was trying to use it, and I can't remember what the heck I was trying to use it for. But I do remember that it was giving me a hard time, and like I said, the documentation link was wrong and whatnot, or missing, or whatever. If I'm not mistaken, honestly, I think I moved away from using it because I couldn't get it to do what I wanted it to do.
Yep.
And what I ended up doing was I fudged it with a drop down.
So let me just take this approach. I want to point out that it can be set up to work reliably, and it does some very neat things. And so I have a couple of them set up in a couple of different ways here, but this would be the normal functionality that you can drill down into a tree and pick something, and when you pick it, you get the IDs off of it and things like that. So we get a text and a value and the path to that thing and whether or not it has children and whether or not it's selectable, its unique ID. All these different things are part of what's there. In a kind of cool functionality, when you get it set up right, and I guarantee you, if you don't have it, I mean, this really qualifies as a ghost story, right? But because I spent a lot of time hunting it down. But if the search functionality automatically opens up the right nodes. So, for example, MA searches for Matthias and Megan and opens up all the parent items. I mean, it's really quite cool. So think about this in terms of if you had a catalog or anything with a hierarchical definition. But it is, in its current setup, it's very cantankerous. It requires precise setup. So that's what I'm documenting, and then we'll work to fix that. Anyone tempted to use this? Okay.
Yes, yeah, I've used it for a file manager replacement. So that I use that control to show the folder structure.
Uh-huh. Do you recall whether that was any difficulty in getting it to implemented?
Well, yeah, I do recall, and I wasn't going to go that far, but I did use it, and it was fine. I wanted to add more to it. I'm trying to remember what it was. Like the ability to click on one of these items and then have actions associated with clicking there. I wound up replacing it with an action grid. Yeah, that had all those features that I built into it. So I did like it. I liked it a lot. I just wanted to go a couple steps further.
Yep. Yes, and since I mean, this control has been around for a long time. I see a history that goes back at least 8 years. Since then, we've released the Treeview view of listings, so it makes another way of viewing this kind of information possible. But if you want it on a form, it's certainly here. Again, I'm going to document all of this, but the main thing I want to mention is that it's very important to provide, this is based on a SQL query. It's very, very important to provide all of the fields that in your SQL query and to use exact case. If you don't, it will drive you crazy. I'll leave it there. Happy to address any questions on support, though. I have this feature request slide, but I'm not sure that there has been anything new. I guess that would be, we could jump to that.
Yeah, I just added one while we were talking.
So just to demonstrate, anybody go to community.planetapp.com. You can go to feature request. You can click in on something, and then once you do, you have the ability to upvote it. And while I'm trying to find the upvote button, Ben has raised his hand.
I just have a question, and it's funny because someone just posted it on community, and this was a question I wanted to bring up today. I had it in my notes. I keep I'm migrating from an Evoke system to a regular platform system, and I'm doing it manually. So I'm copying everything over. So I'm creating a lot of forms, and the forms are not defaulting to Bootstrap 5. They default, I believe, to Material. So if I put one form on the page and I make it Bootstrap 5, and then I, add a grid or whatever, as soon as I add another form, that new form defaults to Material, which then causes the whole page to go crazy, complaining that I'm, mixing the types of bootstraps or whatnot. Is there any way we can set it so that when you add a form, it defaults to the one we want?
I think the answer to the question is yes. Just to make sure I understand, the normal case of form building is that you put a form on a page, and then you go to it says manage the form. You choose that you want a blank form, and then you go on. The blank form functionality gives you Bootstrap 5 and other settings. The absence of going through the blank form dialog is where you fail to pick up the Bootstrap 5 defaults. So are you just
No, unless I misunderstood, that's exactly how I do it. I add a form to a page, and I edit that form, and I always start with blank. I never select one of the templates. But when I do blank, the form styling doesn't default to Bootstrap 5 as its use.
Okay. Are you importing form from the other system, or you're just
Nope, just creating.
So that sounds like a configuration file that didn't get on your system.
Okay.
The blank form is actually a config file that gets loaded. So the answer to your question, though, is yes. It comes from a configuration file, and it's something we need to find and fix. I don't know whether you go ahead, Patrick.
And what you're experiencing was an issue that we corrected, going through it that way. But also, I don't know, did we ever correct it if you go directly to the editing of the form? I can't remember if we did or not.
No, there's as far as I know, the default when you load a form, the defaults of the form, we can go back and check to see. I think there was probably a ticket created on it, but the defaults of the form may not have been corrected. So that's an action item. Let me write that down. But if you'll open a ticket, Ben, I will help find the spot where that goes. And
Yeah, I will, because I just did it now, and I'm staring right at it. It starts me off at material obsolete.
So just to confirm, you did not, did you click the manage form link in the so when you first add a form to a page, there's a manage form link within the module. Did you click that, or did you
No, I go to the top right to the pencil, and I always do manage form full screen.
That's so if you were to click the manage form link, it would and then select the blank form template from that direction. It should load the Bootstrap 5 template.
Yeah, that's the place where you're running problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I never use that because I always like to open up in a new tab, so I always just go full screen on a new tab.
Yep. So placing a form, and
Will it let me do new tab on
the problem direction is this one. You've got a new form, and you try to open it. However, you try to open it with this pencil icon. If you skip this manage form thing, that's where you're running trouble. So I'll do it here. We just say manage form, and it comes in with material obsolete. It's the default that's written in the code, right? And so the alternative, if I go back and don't save that, if you do manage form, you get whatever predefined forms exist for yours, and typically it's now we just release it with blank form. But when you click start on blank form, this is actually a config file that gets loaded. So at that point, other things get changed, including the template. I don't know if that
That's good to know, and thank you.
made sense. Sure. Easy.
That's
I
quite the
will
nuance.
actually be asking, I guess in a ticket or something, where the location is, because I would love to be able to change the label align and width to a different default setting as well for myself.
Absolutely, there is a place. I'll be happy to find it, but it's the configuration just gets loaded, so you can put lots. You can customize. I mean, if you go back to see what you could create a whole setup of a form if you always have X and Y and Z. Or let's take the example of what we're talking about a little bit earlier, that you're going to have an action that loads. If it's going to have a Trumbo Wig to it, and you want to have a configured setup for Trumbo Wig, you could create a form template that comes up on this list of when you have a new form, and you could just click. So your list here could have my Trumbo Wig set up as a type, and you just click start, and it would all load. Cool. All right. Happy to help you find that. With that, there's things we didn't get to. I told you we'd have a full hour, but we're going to we'll call it here, and in a little just as soon as I stop the recording, we'll drop into Afterglow segment. You're invited to stick around and talk a little bit more. But thanks all for participating, and we will see you again next week.